We are at the end. Have you had a good conference? Good conference? Yeah, all right. It's been exciting. We started yesterday with David Allen, getting things done. We've had some fantastic presenters. James yesterday from CERN talked about the possibility of infinite universes, parallel universes, which means that in an infinite universe, this same exact talk is happening right now, except for my voice is deeper. Which would be a little bit nice. Now, we've had some fantastic presentations, incredible exhibitors out there around virtual reality and everything from A to Z. I'm incredibly excited to be here. We had earlier the performance chemist, which was so good, Andrew, and he impressed you all with his German. I'm not going to do that, because my German is not very good. I am trying to learn German. My girlfriend is German. First time I've dated a German. Most efficient relationship I've ever been in. I will say that I knew that it was getting serious when we started sharing a spreadsheet. It's good. But I'm trying to learn German. We've been here for a couple of weeks, and we were going from Germany, visiting her family, because we both live in New York, but we were visiting her family in Germany, and then went to Luxembourg afterwards. And I was like, you know what? I want to try to have an interaction in German. And being an American, I assume that they spoke German in Luxembourg. And so I was like, I'm going to practice. I'm going to try to have an interaction in German. I was like, all right, I'm going to go into the hotel when we first check in, and I'm going to start with Guten Tag. All right, pretty good. Hello, right, good day. Feel like that's a good start. And then I'm going to say, Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Or no, I'm going to say Sprechen Sie English. Right? Because it'd be like, hey, at least he's attempting to speak a little bit of German. They'll be so impressed. They'll say yes, and I'll say Dankeschön. Right? I was like, this is going to be perfect. I go into the hotel, and immediately, right as I get ready to say Guten Tag, the woman says Bonjour. My brain just shut down. And I was not expecting French, I was expecting German, and in my kind of nervousness, I just blurted out for no reason, no hablo inglés. Which is wrong for multiple reasons, right? First of all, she said something in French, I responded in Spanish, and I said in Spanish, I don't speak English. Right? I hablo inglés. In fact, I only hablo inglés, right? And she was very empathetic. She was like, do you want to speak English? And I was like, yes, grazie, prego, right? Because in my head as an American, like if I hear something that is not English, I just respond in not English. Doesn't matter if it's accurate or not. But I'm incredibly excited to be here, to be a part of this event, and to talk to you about something that is incredibly passionate to me, and that is humor. Although we are in Europe, so let me translate that for you. Just add that extra U, right? Talk about humor, because for me, it's something that we can use to get better results. To understand why I'm passionate about humor, it's important to understand a little bit about my background. And the most important thing to know about me is that I am a nerd. If you're wondering what type of nerd, the answer is yes. Computer, math, sci-fi, Dungeons and Dragons, Star Wars, Star Trek, Starbucks, all of them. But most specifically, I am an engineer. And as an engineer, I've always been obsessed with efficiency ever since I can remember, or really since before I can remember, because I was born 3 weeks early. And so apparently, even in the womb, I was like, I don't need a full 9 months. I'm ready to go right now. Right? Let's do this, Mom. Yeah. All right, obsessed with efficiency. I remember in school thinking that smart for me was getting a 93% in all of my classes, because at least in the US, a 93% is the lowest grade you can get and still get an A or still get top marks. And it got to the point that if I got a 94, 95, or worst case scenario, a 100%, I was upset, because it meant that I did more work than I had to do, right? Obsessed with efficiency. So I went on to The Ohio State University, got a degree in computer science and engineering, and after I graduated, I started working at Procter & Gamble as an IT project manager, a big consumer goods company. And at P&G, I started to realize that there is a difference between being efficient and being effective. right? Because you can be efficient with things like computers. You don't need to motivate a computer to work. You don't need to convince it to turn on. It doesn't need a cup of coffee before it starts in the morning, right? But you can't really be efficient with humans because humans have emotions and feelings, right? And they have to eat and sleep, and they get sick and tired, and all, right? So you can't be efficient with people. You have to be effective. And it turns out that humor is one of those skills that can actually help us to be more effective with people. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about. Now, if we are going to talk about humor, though, it's important to start first with a disclaimer. So if you could read that and hit I accept, that would be great. But the disclaimer is to say that I have never actually worked in your companies. I have never been in your role. I have never lived your life. I don't know what it's like to be in your specific culture. What I have done is work with over 250 organizations all around the world on how to use humor to get better results. And what I would encourage you to do over the next half an hour or so that we have together is to think about what things do you want to take with you? What do you want to do differently as a result of us spending some time together? Because by show of hands, how many of you are constant learners? How many of you are constantly learning? Pretty much everyone. Is there anyone who's done learning? Anyone who's like, nope, brain's full? No, right? We're constantly learning. We're constantly evolving, and we have to, right? Some of you, maybe you want to learn how to send emails that actually people respond to. Or maybe you went to some sessions today on Google Ads and marketing. Or maybe you just want to enjoy your work a little bit more so that you look forward to going to it on Monday. Whatever it is, there's something that you want to achieve. And for me, I just want to be as happy as people in stock photos. Right? I want to be as happy as this guy. He loves doing email. He's like, oh my God, yes, please, another one. Reply to all, yes. Please do that, right? Thank you. We just want to be that happy. We want to be as happy as this woman on a conference call. She's like, no, don't mute the phone. I want to hear your dogs barking in the background. I want that, right? Or for me, I'm realizing my meetings should be ending in high fives. Right? Something is wrong. No matter what it is that you want to achieve, whatever results you want to get better at, my guess is that for many of you, it's not going to be about changing what you do so much as changing how you do it. Because as an engineer, I like to take things apart and see how they work and put them back together again. Things like clocks and radios and my parents' marriage. Never got that one back together. Right? But if you take work apart, it really comes down to 5 things. Work, no matter what you do, it's only these 5 things. First, you have to be able to execute. Can you actually, David Allen, get things done? Right? Then you have to be able to think critically and creatively. You have to be able to communicate, or verbal fluency, right? The ability to articulate the intelligence that you have. You have to be able to connect emotionally, right? Emotional intelligence. And then finally, you have to be able to lead. Can you influence people towards a common goal? Or what Drew Dudley talked about earlier today is how personal leadership leads to leadership elsewhere. Doesn't matter who you are, what you do, your work is some subset of these 5 things. And so if you want to get better results, it's not changing what you do, it's these 5, but rather how you do it. And I would encourage you to consider humor as part of that how. Because people who use humor in the workplace, they are more productive, less stressed, and happier. And this is me on the end right here, right? I'm so happy. Even though I have a boo-boo on my head, right? I'm so happy. Right now, I will admit that I work with some pretty conservative organizations. We've done some work with the Red Cross Climate Center, with the FBI, and when I talk with organizations or senior leaders, sometimes, and I talk about the value of humor, sometimes people are a little bit skeptical. Right? Because no one really thinks of humor as a bad thing, right? No one hates to laugh. No one's like, oh, I hate feeling joy in my body. Right? People like humor. They're like, oh, it would be nice if I enjoyed my work a little bit more, but if not, oh well. But the reality is that I believe that humor is a necessity, right? In today's overworked, underappreciated, stress-filled, sleep-deprived world, humor is a must-have. Because not only does humor make you more productive, less stressed, and happier, humor also increases productivity It reduces stress, prevents burnout, provides motivation, increases the size of paycheck. It's a good one, right? Humor also boosts overall brain power, improves decision-making, increases the acceptance of ideas, triggers new connections, enhances problem solving. It does these things and this stuff, and on and on and on. And this is all backed by research, real-world examples, and case studies, right? I didn't make this up. These are tremendous benefits. These are things that we probably want, like diffusing conflict or building trust. Humor burns calories. In fact, 10 to 15 minutes of laughter burns as many calories as 5 minutes of aerobic exercise, 10 minutes of dancing, or 15 minutes of milking a cow. Now, I don't know how Austrians exercise, right? But if you're milking a cow, you can just stop. Or you could milk a cow and laugh at the same time to burn like double the calories, right? Ha 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 ha, and probably get locked up, right? That's weird. That's a weird thing to do, right? But there's tremendous benefits to using humor in the workplace. Now, to understand how we can use humor in the workplace, though, it's important to make sure that we have the same definition of humor. Because as I mentioned earlier, I'm not very good with languages. In fact, it took me going to the UK to learn that I don't even speak English. Right? I speak American. Because British English is different than American English. I didn't realize that. Because like in the UK, they say lift. In the US, we say elevator. Right? They say buggy, we say cart. They say trousers, we say pants. In the UK, pants means underwear. I did not know that. Right? It was on the tube. An older woman gets onto the train. She had these really cool jeans on, and I was like, oh my God, I love your pants. She was like, really? To make sure that we're on the same page. Now, there's one word that I do like here in Europe that like you guys will say, like in the US, we will say bathroom. Right? Here, you'll say water closet or toilet. And I like that because in the US, like if you go to the bathroom here, there is no bath in that room. Right? It's inaccurate. Toilet is more specific, more accurate. I like that. I was like, all right, I'm going to start taking that with me. I'm going to start saying toilet. And so I was in a Starbucks in New York City, where I live, and I went up to the barista, and I was like, excuse me, where are your toilets? She was confused. She was like, in the bathroom? Doesn't always work. So we just want to make sure that we're on the same page when we're talking about humor, because when we think of humor, many of us think of comedy. We think of jokes, we think of laughter, and that's absolutely a big part of humor. But humor is defined as a comic, absurd, or incongruous quality causing amusement. So it's a little bit more broad, maybe something a little bit silly or something a little bit different. For example, this sign from tire discounters in the US. Family owned, shut up. No, you shut up. I feel like that's pretty good. Or this sign that I saw in a park in Norway. This is funny to me because it's the first stick figure that I've ever seen with a butt. Right? People are like, that's clearly his hand. It looks like a butt to me. Right? It's something different. Or this from a physics textbook. Right? And this isn't necessarily the most hilarious thing that you've ever seen, but it is something different. Right? If my physics textbooks had problems like this growing up, I might have tried for more than a 93%. Right? Because I don't care what the force of a random ball hitting a wall is, but I do care what the force of the Batman hitting the Joker is. So when we're talking about humor in the workplace, we're not talking about making the workplace funny so much as a way of working that is different, effective, and fun. And that's what I want to encourage you to try to take with you. Right? So how do we actually use humor? Well, for me, it's about understanding what we call our humor map, which stands for your medium, your audience, and your purpose, where your medium is how are you going to execute that humor? Is it in an email? Is it in a phone call? Is it in a conversation with a friend? Because your medium impacts your message. Right? We know that from music, things like music. This song was #1 in America for 9 weeks. It was nominated for 2 Grammys. It was not because of its lyrical content. Right? You see me, I be work, 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 work. That doesn't make sense, Rihanna. right? Doesn't make sense. But then you hear the song and you're like, okay, it's catchy, right? I get it. Your medium impacts your message. That's not to say that music can't work in another form. This is an ad from Aldi. Whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa, lemon on a pear. It's a pretty good ad, right? Your medium impacts your message. Next, you have to understand your audience. Who is your audience? What do they know? What do they need? What do they expect? So that you can deliver on what they need in a way that they don't expect. Also, what is your relationship with that person? Because you know a joke that you make with a good friend for 10 years is different than what you might say with a client that you've met for the very first time. The other thing to understand about humor is that you're not always going to be able to please everyone. Right? And the goal in communication is not to please everyone. It's to please the target people that you're going after. So understand it's not always going to work. Because I've had the privilege of doing a TEDx talk. And I feel fortunate because it's done well. It's got a little over 4 million views at this point. It's 44,000 likes to 1,000 dislikes, which is like a 97% ratio. So I did the math. I feel OK about it. Right? But there's still over 1,000 people that did not like it. And you can kind of see that in some of the comments, right? So some of the comments are very positive. This was great. It was positive, phenomenal. This person was like, I watched this 5 times on repeat, which seems a little excessive, right? Even my mom doesn't think I'm that funny, right? This person was just yelling how much he liked it. Oh, it's so good, right? But then on the flip side, you had other responses as well. You had things like, this guy is trying too hard. Cringe level 9,000. I agree. He stole his stuff from a lot of other comedians. But luckily, I had some people there to defend me. I thought he was pretty OK. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate the support. Right. I like that. Some were just kind of funny in and of themselves, I think. That's pretty true, right? Imagine this on helium. Right? Imagine this on helium. How would I need to talk with Andrew, the chemist, and be like, let's get some helium. I'm going to be talking only to dogs. They'll be the only thing that can hear me. Right? And then I like this one. This dude's forehead is so big it has its own sense of humor. Pretty funny. Right? People aren't going to like it. For every positive, there was, this guy's hilarious, this guy is not funny, right? Best TED Talk ever, waste of time, brilliant, witty, entertaining, go back to engineering, please. Right? But the goal isn't to appeal to everyone, it's to appeal to your target audience and recognize that every joke that you do, it may not work. And sometimes people are worried about, what if I say a joke that doesn't work? Well, the reality is that it's often only awkward if you make it awkward. Right? If you make a joke and no one laughs, you just move on. If you're like, hey, huh, that's when it gets awkward. Just move on, and you'll be OK. And the final reason to use humor is your purpose. Why do you want to use humor? Because we can use humor for the sake of fun. That's fine. But we can also use it to get better results. This is why, as an engineer, I appreciate humor. This is why I'm so passionate about it. And our purpose can go back to those 5 skills that we talked about. We can apply humor across each one of those skills to be more effective in the workplace. For example, we can use humor to execute faster, to improve our work. Right? We can do things like stay engaged in our work by gamifying the process. So growing up, I worked in a factory for a short period of time. And at the time, I wanted to grow up to become an international hip-hop superstar. I don't know why you're laughing, right? No, but I was not very good. So the way that I passed the time was I would come up with rap lyrics in my head while working in the factory, and then on my break, I would write them down in a rap notebook. And I recently discovered one of those old rap notebooks and realized why I never became a hip-hop superstar. Because one of the rhymes was hydrogen plus oxygen 2, bonded together with covalent glue. What do you get? Just a thing called water. Yeah, it's steaming up, and it's only getting hotter. Right. Oh, thank you. Right. Turns out there's not a huge market for chemistry rap. Right? But what it did is that it helped me stay engaged in my work. When you think about all the tasks that you have to do, think about ways that you can make them a little bit more fun, like these sewer workers. Having a sense of humor, or this person working in a museum, posting all the Beatles. right? Or a fire department person, right? That's Jiffy Pop, so when it gets hot, popcorn's coming out, right? It's just having a little bit of fun, being a little bit playful. I recently came out with a book, and I like wordplay and puns, so I decided to do a literal book launch. And for that, we'll see if we can start that. Yeah, so I started to do a literal book launch and realized that, one, the book was too big for the model rocket, right? I don't know anyone at NASA yet. I need to talk to the guy from NASA a little bit later. So instead, I made a miniature book, miniature copy of the book. We strapped that to a rocket and shot it up into the air. And some people were like, why? And I'm like, why not? Right? A literal book launch. I love science. I love being a nerd. We're just going to shoot it up into the air, have it land like it's a SpaceX rocket, and go and like take a look at it. Right? So we might as well just find ways to have fun in what we do, to stay engaged in our work a little bit longer. We can also use humor as a way to reboot stress, to think about, okay, how do we actually get the ability to relieve the stress that we have, because we know that stress by itself is not a bad thing. Stress is how we grow. But chronic stress, when we don't relieve that stress, that's when we see an increase in muscle tension, an increase in blood pressure, a decrease in the immune system. And so we can use humor as a way to relieve that stress, as a way to recharge as humans, right? Just as our phones need to recharge, we need to recharge ourselves. And so we can do that through something called strategic renewal. Strategic renewal is simply the idea of take a break, right? It's a corporate word for just take a break. And you can do this not just in terms of, oh, I have a holiday planned in a couple of months, or oh, I have the weekend coming up, or oh, I have this evening, but what are the things that you can do throughout the day to have a break, to have a simple laugh, to talk with someone that you enjoy, or listen to a comedy podcast, simple things you can do. Because I've found that it's hard to be productive if you are dead. Right? Or if you feel like death, if you're sick and tired, if you're burned out, stressed out, worn out, right? So humor can help us to stay more engaged. Next, humor can help us to think smarter, right? It can change our perspective a little bit. Question everything. Why? That person learned. We can use humor, one, as a way to change our perspective. So one example of that is I love the shower thoughts on Reddit. If we have any Reddit fans of shower thoughts, these are just people who have these epiphanies, these ideas in the creative pause of a shower. Things like, let's see, falling down is the same thing as being hit by a planet. That's a different perspective, right? The next time you fall down and someone asks, how are you doing? And be like, pretty good considering Earth just smacked me in the face. Right? Another one is when people think about traveling to the past, they're worried they're going to change things, but when they travel in the future, they don't realize how much they could change. But, oh, that's kind of a motivating thought, right? Or this next one's a little bit weird. I'll admit it's a little bit weird, but you'll think about it. The only part of your reflection you can lick is your tongue. That's weird. It's weird, I know. But you're going to be walking by a mirror later. Right? It's just a different perspective, and humor can help us see things differently, which is valuable, because sometimes the key to solving a problem is changing how we see it. So I'm going to show you a problem, and when you know the answer to the problem, I want you to raise your hand. Okay? So I'm going to show you a problem. When you know the answer, raise your hand. Okay? What is the number of the parking space containing the car? Raise your hand when you have the answer. Okay, it's starting to trickle through a little bit. All right, if you know the answer, shout it out. 87, right? So if you know the answer, 87. For me, the first time I saw this, I was like, okay, 16 to 6 is minus 10, plus 62, plus 20. You change your perspective, becomes a lot easier to solve, right? So sometimes we just need a fresh perspective on a problem in order to find that solution. Humor can help us find that different perspective. We can also use humor as a way to build off of what already exists, to improvise innovation, to improvise solutions. These are some clever, I think, improvisational solutions, things like a shower head. All right. Hey, should we move that clock? No, I got it. I figured it out. To release the door, press the green button. Oh, we'll just label it green button. That works as well. But my favorite example, so this next example is from a Chinese place that then became a Mexican place. And they're like, should we repaint the walls and all that? It's like, nope. right? You can build off of what already exists because how you see a problem often dictates how you solve that problem, and humor can give you that fresh perspective. We can also use humor as a way to communicate better, right? Because the average person sends and receives 112 emails per day and spends up to 80% of their time in some form of active communication. We can use humor as a way to, one, get people to pay attention, to actually grab that attention, exit the building before tweeting about it, please. Right? Do not flush sanitary products all the way down to your hopes and dreams. Don't flush those. This next one is in a magazine for a job recruiting ad. Are you in the wrong job? Right. That's adorable. Like, look at his feet just hanging there. Right? If you're flipping through a magazine, you're going to stop at that picture and look at it. It can grab people's attention. We can also use humor as a way to improve understanding. This is a picture from a woman in New York City, and she is talking about astrophysics. And she's using sci-fi movies as a way to explain astrophysics, or rather, she is ruining sci-fi movies. She was talking about Star Wars, and she's like, listen, there are no explosions in space because there is no oxygen, that lightsabers can't exist, and that the Force isn't real. And I was like, all right, that's too far, space lady. Right, because the Force may not be real, but that doesn't prevent me from pretending like it's real every time I go through an automatic door. You guys do the same thing, right? You go to an automatic, like, wah, wah. If you guys aren't doing that, you're missing out on like one of life's greatest joys. Trust me, that is something fun to do. But we can, by connecting to things that people already understand, they understand things more immediately. For example, this is a door to a math classroom. Right? You get angles right away. This was found in a dentist's office. You know immediately what they do. And you're going to be going to sleep a little bit later tonight, and this image is going to pop in your head. Right? You remember things longer. You improve your understanding. Because the reality is that if you get people to laugh, you can get them to listen. If you can get them to listen, you can get them to learn or to take action or to do something differently. Right? The power of humor and communication. We can use it for connection, for building empathy, right? Creating ideas, building and facilitating relationships, bringing people closer together. Because humans are not robots. Because here's my guess. My guess is that many of you are likable people at home. Right? But then for so many people, when they go into the workplace, something changes. Right? They become a shell of a human. They're like, no, I can't show any personality whatsoever. Right? And they might be somebody that like kind of dances at home, they sing in the shower, dance in the kitchen, whatever it is, and then they go into the workplace and they're like, no more fun whatsoever. Right? But we don't live in an industrial age anymore. We live in a knowledge and experience economy, and there is no work-life balance. Right? There's work-life integration because you're always on your device. When you go home, you don't immediately stop thinking about work. You might send a couple of emails, in fact. Over the weekend, you start to think about, oh, okay, these are the things that I want to accomplish. So it's no longer about being a cog in the wheel, but thinking about things differently because our emotions impact our ability to get work done. So we need to manage those emotions, and we can use that using humor because, as Victor Borg said, the shortest distance between two people is a smile. And we label people as resources. Guys ever thought about it? We label people as resources. I did this as a project management manager all the time. I had a list of resources. Right? Just as computers are a resource, or time is a resource, or money is a resource, we said humans are a resource. And over time, we start to forget that the other person on the other side of an email, or the other side of a phone call, or the other side of a conference desk is a fellow human being with human lives and human emotions. Humor reminds us of that humanity. Because we can use humor also to build rapport, to build connections with people. And it can be something simple. It doesn't have to be grandiose and hilarious, but you can simply start meetings with a question. One of my favorite questions of all time is, what is something that you think is true for you that you don't think is true for anyone else in the room? A way to learn about how people are unique, how people are a little bit different, to remind us again of that humanity, because to humor is to human. It's a very human quality that we have. And finally, we can use humor as a way to lead further, right? To get better results. We can use it to diffuse conflict. There's a great example of some police officers in Northern Ireland, and some people started to throw bottles, some teenagers started throwing bottles at the police officers, and rather than kind of get out and chase them away, they just started playing ice cream music. And the teenagers were so confused and so used to like wanting to go to ice cream music that they stopped. Right? It was just something as a way to diffuse conflict very quickly. We can also use it as a way to create opportunity. But all of this stuff works together, right? As we build and build all these ideas together, they only work if you actually do something. Knowing matters, but doing matters more. Right? Knowing matters, but doing matters more. So this is a recap of what we've talked about. Right? We said that humor is more than a nice-to-have. It is a must-have in today's overworked, underappreciated, stress-filled, sleep-deprived world. We said that it's a way of working differently, effectively, and more fun. And we said that we can do it to get these specific results. The last thing that I'll end on before we jump into some questions is an action item. I'm a project manager by background, so we have to end on next steps. And the next step is to start, which is a terrible action item. Right? It's not a SMART goal. Right? It rhymes, I guess, but it's vague. And so if you want a little bit more accuracy, one, there's a couple of resources for you. If you go to gethumor.org/15 seconds and you fill out the survey, you get the 501 ways to use humor in the workplace completely for free. The newest book is also out if you want to see that. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to contact me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have about things. For sure, I'll be sticking around to have some chats as well, or we can connect online for Drew Tarvin for all of that. But the last thing that I will say is that you are responsible for your own happiness. It is not up to your manager, your team, your customers to make sure you enjoy what you do. Hopefully they don't detract from that, but it is entirely up to you. You are responsible for your own happiness. You decide every single day when you go into the workplace how you're going to do your work. So why not choose to have a little bit more fun? Why not choose to get better results? Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.